Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Thursday, August 27th, 2020. And our top story today, well, we're going to do a little history lesson about tontines. What are they and how can they apply today? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Professor John Foreman of the University of Oklahoma College of Law. John, thanks so much for joining us again this morning.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you. It's a pleasure to get the opportunity to talk about Tontine Pensions with you.
Absolutely. I'm so excited that we can actually, I feel like I'm in your classroom and I'm excited about this because both I and the audience are going to learn about something that I think a lot of Americans don't know a lot about. So let's break it down, John. What are tontines? What is a tontine?
Well, tontines are financial products that were originally developed by Lorenzo Di Tonti, an Italian banker in the 1700s. And in fact, Wall Street started to a certain extent with a Tontine coffee house on Wall Street at 82 Wall Street. But what a tontine is a financial instrument where people gather together their investments, pool their investments, if you will. And in the original tontine notion, the last one standing, the last one alive, would get the pot. So we've each put in $1,000 and the last person alive would get all the money that was put in by all of the investors. So let me give you a simple example of a tontine that might be useful for retirement security purposes. That is, 10 65-year-old men might each put $1,000 into a box. And that box would hold the $10,000 that the 10 men had put in. Now, they're all the same age, so they all expect to have the same kind of life expectancy, and who knows what's going to happen. But after a few years, one of them dies, so there's only 9 of them left, and instead of each being entitled to $1,000 out of the box, they're each entitled to about $1,111 out of the box. Now, they still have to live the full 10 years to get their money back, plus the shares of those who died. But 9 of them are feeling pretty good, and the 10th one has lost his $1,000 investment, but he doesn't really care because he's dead, and maybe he's already taken care of his wife and children through other means. So this was just an extra investment, if you will. A few years later, another one might die, and that seems pretty realistic. About 20% of men age 65 will pass away before reaching age 75, or 80% of 65-year-old men will reach 75. At age 75, the tontine could end, and each of the 8 surviving investors would get $1,250 out of the investment. They'd get their original $1,000 back, but they'd also get $250, which we call a mortality gain, the gain you get because others who were investors have died and forfeited their shares of the investment. Moreover, if this $10,000 had been invested, there could be some investment gains that could be shared among the 8 surviving investors as well. Well, you get the idea. That's how a simple tontine for a 10-year period would work. And my co-authors and I have developed a variety of possible tontine pension products that could do the same and provide retirement income to individuals who chose to invest in tontines of various kinds.
And, John, last month you and I chatted very briefly. We talked about retirement income and we talked about pensions, and many pensions are going away, at least in the corporate world, or have gone away in the corporate world. And there's some challenges with funding public pensions. Do you see tontines, and you and your co-authors, do you see these as a potential true solution for this, for the public pension, for the corporate pension that people were guaranteed early on in their careers if they started early enough?
I do see that, and I've written a couple of articles on that subject with Mike Sabin, another article or two with Richard Fulmer, and of course another expert in the field is Moshe Milevsky. But the thing about tontines is, like defined contribution plans, they are always fully funded. The money in the plan is all that the investors are ever going to get back, plus any interest earned along the way. The trouble with defined benefit plans is that they're often underfunded And nowhere is that more true than in the public sector with state and local pension plans that are fairly dramatically underfunded. So if a state and local government were to change to having a tontine pension, at least they wouldn't be underfunded as to the future. Now, as to the past, for example, the California State Teachers Retirement System's $100 billion underfunded. And the state of California is simply going to have to come up with the money to pay that benefit off. But if they change to a tontine pension into the future, then they would make future contributions that would be shared among the teachers who would retire in the future. And that based on their mortality experience and the investment returns, that's what they get as a pension. Much like you get with a defined contribution plan, you put money in a defined contribution plan or an IRA, and you get back what you've invested plus interest. With a tontine pension, you get back what you've invested plus interest if you survive. Plus, you also get the mortality gains of those who died before you, which means you get a lifetime income for as long as you live. You might live to 75, as I mentioned earlier. You might live to 105, but a tontine pension would continue to give you money. So the nice thing about tontine pensions for state and local governments, or even for the corporate sector or for other countries, or perhaps even for Social Security, is that a constant amount of money would be available. They'd always be fully funded. They'd always be making lifetime payments to those who survive. And those who die don't care. They're gone.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's you go off to the great unknown, and really you don't have a stake in the here and now. John, what are some of the? I've got a couple minutes left in this segment. We can talk about it, spill over into the next segment. But why did Tontine stop, or when did Tontines stop, and why? I mean, why are we kind of revisiting something that was started? The first tontine, as you mentioned, started I think in the 1700s or 18th century. So right. Why did it?
Yes, and actually tontines were used for some early government funding. Instead, before there were government bonds, for example, England used a tontine to borrow money so that they could pay for one of their many wars with France. In the United States, actually, tontines were the first insurance policies, if you will. And in the 1860s, 1870s, and so a lot of tontines were offered before life insurance or annuities were generally available to the public. The problem with tontines at that time, as is always a problem when you've got a big pot of money, is that the person who gathered up the money and claims to be the custodian might run off with it. And so towards the end of the 1800s in the United States, there were lots of tontines, but a number of the organizers of tontines ran off with the money. That would be a lot less of a problem today because we have much better supervision of financial products under the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974 and under the Securities and Exchange Acts and the state regulators. So that's a lot less likely. But what happened was tontines were the products that were sold to regular people. You know, give me $1 a month, and you know, as other people die or if you survive, then you'll get some money back in the 1880s, 1890s. But by about 1905, the state of New York started to look at these very closely, regulating them and being concerned about them. And in effect, a number of states made it impossible to set up tontines. And our modern insurance market grew up instead, and annuity market and insurance market grew up instead. But tontines are only technically illegal in 2 states, and I can't remember which ones. They should be legal most places, and with good regulation, the organizer of a tontine wouldn't run off with money. So we'd have a lot less concern about that. I think tontines can be a lot more efficient and in fact cheaper than life insurance products. When a life insurance company sells you an annuity, they have to have reserves and they have to make a big profit. With a tontine, there's no guarantee. With life insurance or annuities, there is a guarantee. And that guarantee costs money. With a tontine, you get what you've invested, mortality gains, and investment returns. But you don't get a guaranteed amount every month for the rest of your life. You get an amount that's probably going to be pretty close to what an insurance company would guarantee. Should be a little bit higher because there aren't those extra fees of paying for the risk.
Yeah. Well, John, I mean, this is a really interesting conversation. I want to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Professor Foreman about the implementation of what that could take. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
If you are like 58% of Americans, you didn't go to college. Or you did, but never finished. Maybe it's the thought of a big, intimidating campus. At Independence University, all classes are held online. Maybe it's the thought of being alone in a sea of students. At Independence U, you'll get a personal support team to help you every step of the way. Maybe it's the cost of all those books and supplies. Online means no books to buy. We even give you a new laptop and tablet to keep when you graduate. Maybe your life doesn't fit typical college classes. At Independence U, our online college fits your schedule. Let's meet a few students.
Independence University held my hand through the process.
Don't be afraid to take the leap because it has changed my life drastically.
Just take the first step and you can do it. If I did it, you can do it too.
At IU, there's no barriers to your degree.
800-535-9916.
Welcome back. We're talking to Professor John Foreman of the University of Oklahoma College of Law. John, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Pleasure to be here.
So we had a great, I don't know if theoretical, historical discussion about tontines. Really interesting, and you know, per your thoughts, there really is the financial and regulatory apparatus that exists today to possibly revisit the tontine, and it's really an interesting concept. What are some of the impediments? I mean, are there impediments? I would think, and I want to get your perspective on this. One, I would think, would be the industry itself, because it kind of went away. Now they already have something in place. And the other might be educational. Do you have to educate people in a different way than we're educating them today about financial products?
Well, there's always a problem when people buy an annuity or even a tontine annuity. They're always thinking, well, I don't want to give all this money into an investment, $10,000 into an investment. And then, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. So people resist investing in annuities, and they would similarly resist investing in tontine annuities or pensions. But I think they could be enticed into it because of the higher returns of really either of those investments. The big battle that I foresee in the future is a battle between the insurance industry and basically Wall Street mutual funds, because Wall Street mutual funds could offer something like a tontine pension or a Tontine annuity that was virtually identical to and a little bit cheaper than what insurance companies are offering in the form of lifetime annuities. They could do that, but there are some regulatory hurdles to get over. The biggest one is that insurance is regulated by the 50 states. The insurance industry is quite powerful, and they've made sure that you can't sell a product that's insurance or insurance-like without permission from the states and essentially from the insurance companies that are trying to keep out any competition. So it would take some effort on the part of Schwab and Fidelity and Vanguard, but they could break into this market, and I think they could take it away from the traditional annuities. Traditional annuities guarantee you, say, $1,000 a month for the rest of your life. But to do that, they have large reserves. They also are compelled, in essence, to invest in bond-like assets rather than stock-like assets. What I'm talking about with Tontine annuities or Tontine pensions is much more like a pooled annuity. Now, TIA, the company TIA, has what's called a CREF variable annuity, which they invented in 1952 and has gotten some play. But with a CREF pooled annuity, it's very much like a Tontine. CREF or TIA doesn't guarantee a specific payment out of that account. But if I choose to take a CREF annuity payout, I will get a fixed sum I will get a variable sum for the rest of my life that will be based on how much I have invested in that CREF account and the mortality experience of the other teachers like me who choose to take it as an annuity rather than as a lump sum, which most people do with their variable annuities or mutual funds. So that's already sort of perfectly legal, but I did note that, or do note that TIA is regulated by insurance commissioners and has agreed to have its products regulated by state insurance commissioners. And I think that's unnecessary because of the nature of these products. I think the Securities and Exchange Commission and the IRS could modify their rules slightly to make it possible to have Tontine annuities and thus Tontine pensions without that insurance regulation. I certainly do think that insurance companies would fight tooth and nail against the mutual funds trying to take away their business.
I think that's probably an understatement. I mean, no one wants to cannibalize their own product line. But John, are we talking about this because the passage of the Secure Act back in December of last year, which seems like ages ago now, with the passage of the CARES Act and everything we're going through with the COVID pandemic? But are we talking about this, and do you think it gets a fresh look and other ideas get fresh look because that Secure Act included a provision for lifetime income, both disclosure and lifetime income in general out of the retirement plans?
Absolutely. I think Tontines and other ideas, pooled annuities and other ideas, are going to get a fresh look because of the need people have for lifetime income and the fact that we live longer than our parents and our grandparents, certainly. So we need lifetime income. Now, Social Security provides a base of lifetime income to 90 or 95% of Americans and American families. We used to have traditional defined benefit plans that paid out in the form of an annuity. Like I say, your employer, if you worked there for 30 years, you might get $1,000 a month for the rest of your life on top of your $1,500, $2,000 a month from Social Security. And maybe that would be enough to live on if you already owned your home. But traditional defined benefit plans have largely been abandoned by the corporate sector, and they're having troubles in the public sector. Fewer and fewer people are going to have the same employer for 30 years and earn a traditional pension. Instead, with the passage of ERISA and subsequent legislation, we've turned into a 401k world and an IRA world. People invest in individual accounts, and that's great. We're accumulating lots of money in our individual accounts, which we hope not everybody saves because they're not required to, but those that save are accumulating relatively good amounts. But then when they get to retirement, ERISA was silent as to what should happen to the assets in 401k plans. Congress wants people to take the money in their 401k plans and annuitize it. But people tend to resist buying annuities, and they might well resist buying Tontine annuities as well. But Congress is interested in not having a bunch of octogenarian widows and widowers on welfare or just on Social Security. They want us to have more lifetime income. And most of us that think about it want to have more lifetime income. So we want to make it a lot easier for people to convert, a $200,000, $400,000, $600,000 lump sum in your 401k plan into an annuity. So the Secure Act essentially requires plans to tell you that, hey, the $500,000 you have in your 401k plan would buy you an annuity of $25,000 a year if invested properly in some kind of annuity. And that gives people the idea that at least they can have some regular income out of this lump sum that they've accumulated. And I'm looking over coming years for Congress to encourage and make it easier to get annuities out of your lump sums, but certainly to encourage individuals to choose that, and perhaps to encourage employers to select annuity products, build in annuity products on 401k and IRA platforms so that people have the opportunity to buy annuities. If not during their working career, then certainly before they take that lump sum out.
Yeah. Well, look, I think we're just at the start of this conversation. Clearly, there are new ideas out there. They need to be infused with old ideas. John, I want to thank you so much I feel like I just attended one of your classes. I feel that much smarter. Thanks so much for joining us on the program today. We'll look forward to having you back again very soon.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your interest.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our newsletter, The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.